So we all know of the fan favorite kid movie Pinocchio that was brought to life by Disney, and it was an old tale that everybody seems to love. But did you know the dark side of Pinocchio? And did you know the dark side of Pinocchio's presence at Knott's berry farm? Because there was one, and Pinocchio sought to wreak havoc throughout Knott's scary farm for the years that he was there. That's right, everybody. Welcome back to SoCal Exploring. My name is Scott. You're watching the #1 stop for all things theme park related. And today we're kicking off a brand new series where I take a piece of haunt history, like a maze, a scare zone, an experience, a theme of an event, and I break it down and talk about it a little bit and talk a little bit about the history of it. Now keep in mind, this isn't going to be like a super factual history video that you normally see of people doing like 30-minute videos of. I'm just going to simply break down the brief history of it, tell you a little bit about what it was, tell you a little bit about some of the controversy, if there was some, because in some of the mazes and some of the experiences I want to talk about, there is some bit of controversy in them. So I'm going to be breaking those down and just talking about them and talking about my thoughts. And today we're talking about none other than Pinocchio Unstrung at Knott's Scary Farm. We're kicking it off with a good one of my personal favorite mazes of all time at Knott's Scary Farm. But if you're new here, subscribe with those bell notifications on, because you're not going to want to miss the videos like we're doing like this. We have Horror Nights and Scripted going, other theme park videos. Subscribe, you're not going to want to miss it. Help us out by donating $3 to our Buy Me a Coffee page today, link down in the description. We also have official SoCal Exploring merchandise that you can click the link down in the description for, and check out our social media as always at SoCal Exploring Media on Instagram and at SoCal Exploring on Twitter. So what was Pinocchio Unstrung? Well, like I said, it was the Knott's Scary Farm maze, and the story of the maze was based around the Blue Fairy denying Pinocchio's wish, in which himself sought to torture the Blue Fairy, and as you guys can guess, all hell broke loose in this Scary Farm maze. The maze first debuted in 2012 and ran until 2015 and definitely had tons of changes throughout the different years. But were some of them good changes or were some of them bad changes? Well, there's quite a few actually. This maze location in specific is actually still a maze location to this day and currently houses Origins the Curse of Calico from last year's event and whatever it hosts this year. It is located in Ghost Town in the Wilderness Dance Hall right across from Pony Express. What better designer to design this maze than himself, Daniel Miller. Daniel Miller has been creations like Pumpkin Eater and other creations at Knott's Scary Farm's history. Now let's first start off with the first year that it debuted, 2012, like I said. It was a very strong year for the maze. Now 2012, the maze was set up perfectly. Everything was working. It was a brand new maze. Everybody liked it for the most part. You can see the different scare actors that were dressed like Pinocchio would be, with a long kind of creepy nose that was kind of bent as well, signifying that it was Pinocchio because he had lied and he grew this nose. It was really neat. It was a really cool experience, as well as the facade that lasted throughout all of the years. Now the facade actually had two different puppets' arms that were moving frequently throughout the night, and actually move all throughout the night, I believe. But even though the facade was just an archway with the name Pinocchio Unstrung, the aesthetics of it and the detail of it looked absolutely amazing. It looked absolutely beautiful. I loved it. I loved how like simple and nice the facade was. It was all outside during the queue and all throughout the maze as well. They played like super eerie music and super creepy eerie music that you'd listen to when you're watching like a creepy doll movie, or in this case a puppet. We traveled through different mini scenes in 2012, as well as we saw a couple of different animatronics were absolutely stunningly beautiful. Like we saw a few of tiny little Pinocchio animatronics that jump out at you. Actually, they may have been puppets, but who knows? Some of them are animatronics, some of them were puppets, and in the later years we'll get to that. Some of them were actually changed to animatronics. But the little creepy Pinocchio puppets, when I walked through it, actually scared the living hell out of me here and there. They were just down there by your feet. They'd jump out at you and you'd be like, what the hell? And then you saw different scenes with Pinocchio. You saw Pinocchio a lot throughout this maze, which is really neat. I mean, it is his maze, Pinocchio Unstrung. You should be seeing him a lot. And then you'd keep walking through and you'd see Stromboli, but you wouldn't see Stromboli as a scare actor. And to be noted, you never saw Stromboli as a scare actor at all throughout all of the years at Scare Farm. You never saw him as an actual scare actor. He was just kind of a mannequin that was dangling, and Pinocchio was walking around him kind of like, hey, I'm killing Stromboli, you know, super scary, super demented stuff. But also one of my favorite parts of this maze was we actually went to Pleasure Island. and Pleasure Island was filled with different things that would make you feel like you're on a pleasure island, like you're going through a fun little place for kids. It was kind of like a carnival essence, and you saw one donkey in a specific scene, I'm pretty sure. But the entrance to Pleasure Island was really neat. It was really cool. It was such a beautiful scene nonetheless. No, I'm not describing every single scene. I'm just kind of summarizing it so it doesn't sit here and take like a 45-minute video. But then we got to the outside portion of it where we went into the cages where the donkeys were located. The jackasses were located at that were actually pretty terrifying. I mean, if you have ever seen a donkey, like an actual standing donkey, in human form, I mean, I'd be scared, and I was scared. And then we went into kind of like the mouth. I never really understood this part, but I guess it was a mouth of Monstro, I guess you could say. And you went through kind of this area, this jungly area where you were encountered by guillotine people, ghillie suit people, which is kind of a basic scare. So it was cool, but we've seen it before. And through here, you never actually saw the Blue Fairy as a scare actor until later years. We actually saw her, if I'm not corrected, from all the walkthroughs that I watched, because it's been a while since I walked through this maze in specific. From all the walkthroughs that I've watched, I don't think the Blue Fairy debuted as an actual scare actor until 2015. It's the last year at the event. But before that, you could hear her voice playing throughout this kind of jungly area as it led you up to the big finale scene that was absolutely impressive. Well, not to mention, you did see Jiminy Cricket as like an animatronic. It was a really weird, demented Jiminy Cricket, but nonetheless, it was cool that they had him in there. You made your way into the finale scene, which it had to stack like 3 different walls on top of each other to cover this from being seen from any other places, even though if you were to get on Pony Express during the daytime, you could see this actual finale scene and see the puppet standing there. And that's right, it was a huge, I don't know the exact height of it, but it was a huge puppet slash animatronic. I don't know which it was. There could have been people controlling it, which would have made it a puppet, but it also could have been a very light animatronic. This thing was impressive. It was huge. There was flashing lights. There was a big head of Pinocchio. I mean, it was scary, and it made all the perfect audio cues and everything. It was absolutely terrifying, as well as adding some of the characters in there. Moving into 2013, it was still relatively the same. You can definitely tell that there was a couple effects that were starting to go downhill, and there was a couple other additions that weren't in there in 2012, but for the most part, 2013's maze was the exact same maze as 2012's, which brings us to 2014, the introduction of the skeleton key rooms. And this is one of the topics I want to talk about as far as haunts goes, is Knott's run with skeleton key rooms. Now, if you don't know what a skeleton key room is, basically if you paid extra, you'd have access to all the skeleton key rooms that were scattered throughout Knott's Scary Farm, and some before some of the mazes that you'd go into. And Pinocchio had a skeleton key room, so you'd go into the left, you'd go into the room, and Pinocchio would kind of interact with you. He'd string you up like as if you were a puppeteer, or not a puppeteer, a marionette. I'm gonna just say a puppet. And then he'd put on a show himself, like kind of puppeteering other puppets, and then a girl would come out and she'd scream, and then you'd follow through to the maze. There was no special entrance or anything. You just go out of that room and go into the normal entrance, which was a little weird, but I don't know, it was cool. Definitely think the skeleton key room for Pinocchio was definitely one of my favorites in my personal opinion. I don't know, I just really liked it. I really like how they played into the idea of you becoming a puppet and Pinocchio kind of torturing you. Not so as much him torturing the Blue Fairy, but him also torturing the people that were coming into his maze in his House of Abyss. But 2014, in my personal opinion, is the year that you started to see stuff, a lot of stuff actually, kind of get, not, how would I say this? It kind of got old. That's the easiest way to say this. It got really old. They started to brighten up the maze a little bit more than actually have it darker, which in my personal opinion, I do think that there are some mazes that work with brighter scenes. But with Pinocchio Unstrung and the Demented kind of weird story that they were trying to tell, it should have stayed dark. There shouldn't have been tons of light that they were trying to make the maze a little bit brighter. And like I said, they'd add a couple characters here and there, a couple new characters, a couple of different details, like Stromboli had a couple of different details to him. And there was just, a couple here and there. But you can definitely tell that Knott's was like, okay, what are we going to do next? How are we going to add something new to this maze? And it seemed like for 2015 that Knott's was planning to do something good for this maze and, give it one last hoorah because it was his last year and really add some new stuff in there. However, that wasn't the case. Now, I'd say 2014 and 2015 is the reason that Pinocchio Unstrung gets a bad rep, because a lot of the stuff was run down. There's a couple scenes that were bare in there. But for those OG fans that went through Pinocchio Unstrung in 2012 and 2013, like myself, that is the reason I say it's one of my favorite Not Scary Farm mazes of all time. 2015 saw the return of the skeleton key room that we talked about in 2014. And it also saw the return of basically the exact same maze in 2014, but a little bit crappier quality. I mean, in 2015, you can see how old all the props were getting. Even the little puppets that were coming by your feet, like your ankles that I was talking about earlier when we were talking about the first year was coming, they would kind of jump out really slow. They were kind of worn down a little bit, and that's why I think that they made them into animatronics and they weren't puppets anymore. They just like kind of like instead of if you guys you get what I'm trying to say there. So that was a little bit run down. It seemed like there weren't as, and I know scare actors do such a great job at acting in all haunts and all their respected haunts, but in 2015, I don't think the scare actors were as strong as they were back in previous years. That's just my personal opinion. However, we did see the Blue Fairy. We did see her in the maze finally as a scare actor, and at least that's from what I can remember. That's the first time that I saw her in the actual maze. So all of our favorite characters in there, but like I said, they made the maze bright. They made it a little bit brighter in Pleasure Island. It was actually quite a bit more brighter in there. It kind of made it more like as if it was actual kid friendly. And there were some masks in there that you could see that were just kind of falling off of characters. And they just didn't work out with the maze as well. It was a fun maze and all. But the one thing that Knott doesn't really do good at is they don't do a good upkeep with some of these mazes. And there's a couple mazes that they've done a good upkeep with and keeping them fresh and nice for everybody. But with Knott's is like kind of mazes like this, they don't do a very good job at keeping up with them, which I wish they would have kept up with Pinocchio Unstrung, because Pinocchio Unstrung, like I said, it's one of my favorite themes. It was one of my favorite mazes of all time. I just love the theme of a demented Pinocchio story. That's exactly what we got in this maze. But to wrap things up, Pinocchio Unstrung is still one of my favorite mazes of all time to come to Not Scare From between 2012 through 2015. I want to know if you guys got to experience this maze at least for one of the year, and if you experienced it for multiple years, which year was your favorite at Not Scary Farm? Let me know down in the comment section. Subscribe if you're new here with those bell notifications on, and follow us on social media at SoCal Exploring Media on Instagram and at SoCal Exploring on Twitter. My name is Scott. You've been watching SoCal Exploring. Positivity is key, and most importantly, remember to keep exploring. Peace.